All right, let's get into it. Today we're going to talk about a piece of technology that, honestly, makes the modern web feel, well, modern. We're talking about WebSockets, the engine that really powers the real-time internet.
I mean, think about it for a second. When you're in a chat app, you're not sitting there hitting a refresh button to see if your friend replied, right? The messages just show up. Same thing with live sports scores or stock prices. That little bit of magic, it's not magic at all. It's WebSocket. So, to really get why WebSockets are such a big deal, you got to look at what the world was like before they existed. The early web was built entirely on HTTP, which was great for fetching documents, like web pages. But for live conversations, it had a major bottleneck.
Yeah, using just HTTP for a real-time chat was kind of like trying to have a fast-paced argument using snail mail. Seriously, your browser would send a request, that's one letter, to the server. The server gets it, thinks about it, writes a reply, and sends its own letter back. If you wanted to know if there was anything new, you had to send another letter and just wait. It was slow, it was clunky, and it felt nothing like a real conversation.
Now, developers are a clever bunch, so they came up with a workaround called polling. But let's be real, it was a hack. The folks who eventually designed WebSocket even called this technique an abuse of HTTP. It was forcing a protocol to do something it was never, ever designed for. And man, was it inefficient. So what did this abuse actually look like? Well, it was basically your browser constantly pestering the server. Hey, you got anything new for me? And 99% of the time, the server would just be like, nope. So your browser waits a second and asks again. Okay, how about now? Anything? Still nope. This would just repeat over and over, creating a ton of pointless network traffic and wasting server resources. It was just exhausting.
Okay, so clearly, that old way of doing things couldn't last. The web needed something better. It needed a true, two-way conversation. And that's exactly what WebSocket brought to the table. A direct, open line for communication.
So what is it exactly? Well, at its heart, WebSocket is a protocol that sets up a persistent, full duplex connection. Let's break down those fancy words. Persistent just means the connection stays open. It's like keeping a phone line open instead of hanging up and redialing every time you want to say something. And full duplex, that means both you and the server can talk at the same time whenever you want. It's a real conversation.
And hey, don't just take my word for it. The people who literally wrote the rulebook for this, in the official standard called RFC 6455, they spelled it out pretty clearly. The goal was to stop abusing HTTP and create a proper tool specifically for two-way communication.
This chart really lays it all bare. With HTTP, communication is a one-way street at a time, and the connection is basically stateless. It has amnesia, forgetting you after every single request. But with WebSocket, it's a two-way superhighway, and the connection is persistent. The server actually knows who it's talking to the whole time. This completely changes the game when it comes to overhead and lag. HTTP is heavy. WebSocket is incredibly lightweight once it gets going.
So how does this all happen? How do you go from the clunky, old-school HTTP to this sleek, new WebSocket channel? It all starts with a really clever trick called the handshake.
And what's so brilliant about this is that it uses the same front door everyone already knows, HTTP. The process actually kicks off as a normal HTTP request. The client just adds a little note that says, hey, I'd like to upgrade this conversation to use WebSockets. If the server is cool with that, it sends back a special code, 101, which basically means, roger that, we're switching protocols. And just like that, the very same connection transforms from HTTP into an open WebSockets channel.
But wait, how does the client know the server really understands WebSockets and isn't just some old server getting confused? Well, the client sends a unique secret key. The server then does some specific math with that key and a special magic string that only WebSocket servers know. It sends the result back. If the client gets the correct answer, it knows for sure the server is legit and has agreed to the upgrade. It's like a secret handshake to make sure everyone's on the same page.
And this is why that whole handshake is so incredibly important. Just look at the difference here. A typical HTTP request with all its headers and cookies can easily be hundreds of bytes long. But once that WebSocket connection is open, each little message or frame only has a tiny header of a few bytes. We are talking about a massive reduction in data overhead. That insane efficiency is what makes low-latency communication even possible.
Okay, so we've covered the what and the how. Now for the really important part. Where are you actually running into this technology in your day-to-day life?
It turns out, it's pretty much everywhere. Every time you use a chat app like Slack or Discord, you're using WebSockets. When you're watching live sports scores update on a web page without hitting refresh, that's WebSockets. Online multiplayer games, those crazy live financial stock tickers, even collaborative tools like Google Docs where you can see your coworkers typing in real time. Yep, all powered by this amazing protocol.
Now, as awesome as WebSockets are, they're not a silver bullet. Just because you've got a powerful new hammer, it doesn't mean every problem is a nail. It's super important to know when to use them, and just as important, when good old reliable HTTP is still the better choice.
HTTP is still the king of the web for a reason. For things like fetching a static web page, building a standard REST API, submitting a login form, or dealing with anything that can be easily cached by a browser, HTTP is perfect. Its request and response model is simple, scalable, and incredibly solid for these kinds of tasks.
You reach for WebSocket when the rules of the game totally change. If you need true real-time, super low-latency communication, if you need the server to be able to send data to you without you asking for it first, or if you're sending a ton of tiny, frequent updates, then WebSocket is absolutely the right tool for the job, no question.
So, to wrap it all up, WebSocket wasn't just another small update. It was a revolutionary step forward. It solved a fundamental problem that was holding the web back, and it's what allowed us to go from a world of static documents to the dynamic, interactive apps we can't live without today.
But you know how it is. Technology never stands still. WebSocket was the game-changing solution for its time, but new protocols like Web Transport, which is built on the super-fast HTTP/3, are already on the horizon. And that leaves us with a really fascinating question to ponder. If WebSockets gave us the real-time web as we know it, what incredible new experiences will this next generation of communication tech unlock?